Afternoon, everyone. The House Taxation Committee will please come to order. As always, our first agenda item is request for bill introductions. Do we have any requests? Seeing none, we will move on to our first item of business for the day, and that is to open the hearing on Senate Bill 147. And I would first turn to the revisor's office for an overview, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 147 defines nonprofit integrated community care organization and also provides a sales tax exemption for purchases made by these organizations. According to the bill, the definition would be an entity that is exempt from federal income taxation pursuant to 501c3, is certified to participate in the Medicare program as a hospice provider and focused on providing care to the aging and indigent population at home and through inpatient care, adult daycare, or assisted living facilities and related facilities and services across multiple counties. And then lastly, it would be approved by the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services as an organization providing these services under the program of an all-inclusive care for the elderly as defined in federal law. And then as I stated, the bill would provide a sales tax exemption for any entity qualifying for purchases made by any entity qualifying under the definition. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sievers. Committee, any questions? I just have one. Adam, do we have any idea, and perhaps Revenue can address this, how many entities there are that would qualify?
I would probably have to defer to Kathleen to answer that question.
Okay, thank you. I will reserve that for her. If there are no further questions, we will move on to the fiscal note, and I would turn to Department of Revenue to address the fiscal note, please.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Kansas Department of Revenue. KDOR is estimating that Senate Bill 147 would decrease state revenues by $93,000 in fiscal year 2022. Of that total, the state general fund would be estimated to decrease by $78,000 and the state highway fund by $15,000 in fiscal year 2022. What we have found is we think that maybe one organization will qualify for this exemption. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. And I had seen that in your fiscal note there, and I just was curious if it was indeed just one that we anticipated. So, committee, are there any further questions for the Department of Revenue? Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the same question because I saw in the fiscal note one, yet in testimony it appears that organizations see several other opportunities to use this. I mean, as I looked at other organizations, and that'll come out, I guess, in testimony. My question is, from a standpoint of policy, being fairly new to this committee, what types of organizations are tax exempt categorically, or is everything just a statutory change in order to affect one by one? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think with many of the sales tax exemptions, there are specific groups. If we start talking about nonprofit organizations, then they are specifically provided for in the statute for a specific sales tax exemption. I'm not sure, let me look here. In 3606, which you have in front of you, where does it list all of the? If we look at page 26 of the bill, it does start listing a lot of the not-for-profits that will be exempt from tax, from the sales tax under VV. So specific organizations have come in and requested a sales tax exemption, these not-for-profits, and they are getting them based upon VV. But like educational institutions will be exempt from sales tax, nonprofit hospitals. So, I mean, there's many exemptions that are under 3606.
Thank you.
If you wish, sometime we could have a comprehensive review of all of those exemptions. Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for that overview, Kathleen. At this time, we will open up proponent testimony for Senate Bill 147, and I would first welcome to committee Sean Sullivan with Midland Care.
For a couple of years how to turn this on. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman Smith and members of the committee. My name is Sean Sullivan. I'm president and CEO of an organization called Midland Care Connection, and we would be the one organization that would qualify for this sales tax exemption that you all received an overview of. So I want to do three things real quick, if you'll allow me to. First, who Midland is, what we do, where we serve. Second, what PACE is, which is one of the things that's an integral part of this legislation, and who qualifies for an exemption. And three, the reasons that we're here testifying in support. So first of all, I'm with Midland Care Connection. We're a local nonprofit. We serve 21 counties in Northeast Kansas, and we provide care and services to 1,700 people, about 1,700 people every day. And we do that through a variety of programs and services. So we do that through home health, we do it through a program called PACE, we do it through hospice, Meals on Wheels, grief and loss counseling. We have a small assisted living up north, as well as a few other things. So the main programs that we have, our largest programs, are hospice, home health, Meals on Wheels, and PACE. Most people are familiar with Meals on Wheels and what that is and what it does. Most people are familiar with hospice. Many people are not familiar with PACE. So on the third page of my testimony, which hopefully you all have, I provided background on what PACE is. So PACE stands for the Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. It's been a program that's been around since 2002 in Kansas. The people that qualify for PACE are 55 and older, are certified by the state or their contractor to need nursing home care. Number three, are able to live safely in the community at the time of enrollment. And then fourth, live in a PACE service area, which about half of the state, would like for it to be all the state, but currently half the state has a PACE program in their area. On that page, you'll see all the things we do in the PACE program. It is a nursing home alternative in which we do everything humanly possible to keep seniors at home, healthy, independent, and well, out of hospitals and out of high-cost settings. 98% of the people that we serve across the state in PACE are on Medicaid and Medicare or have both. And you'll see there listed all the things we do. So we do adult day services, we have physician clinics, we provide meals, medications, therapies, counseling, medical care, in-home support, telehealth, social services, specialties, respite care. If a person needs to go to a hospital, to the ER, to inpatient overnight stays, we coordinate that, we pay for it to hospitals in our network. If a person needs to go live short or long-term in a nursing home or assisted living facility, again, we coordinate that, pay for it, and do all the things. So essentially, we are similar to CanCare, to a managed care plan, except that we do everything ourselves, provide services ourselves. And you'll see the outcomes at the bottom of the page for what this accomplishes. So we were able to keep 97% of those that we serve at home, despite needing nursing home level of care. We keep them out of the hospital. We keep them from bouncing back to the hospital. We keep them from going to the ER, and keep them satisfied with good outcomes. So that was hopefully just real briefly about what PACE is. So if you look at the overview of the criteria that's in this proposed legislation, Senate Bill 147, which passed 39-0 in the Senate a couple weeks ago, to qualify for this, an organization would have to be exempt from federal income taxation. Number two, be certified to participate in the Medicare program as a hospice provider. And number 3, be approved by KDADS as a PACE provider. So there's a and between 2 and 3, which is why there's only one organization, which is us, that qualifies for this or would qualify in the future, which I'll explain the rationale for that here in a minute. So there are only 3 PACE providers in Kansas. Midland Care is one and the largest. The second is Ascension in Wichita. They are already sales tax exempt. Their PACE program is sales tax exempt because they're part of a larger umbrella parent organization that meets the state statutes. And the third is a organization called Blue Stem that's in the McPherson, Hutch, Newton area that is also sales tax exempt because they are a senior living nursing home provider as well. I know that sales tax exemptions for a previous life are always a little bit thorny, and I know that for good reason, many people want to have a fair, flat sales tax base. There are a couple of reasons that we would support Senate Bill 147 and this exemption. The first is for fairness and equity reasons. So again, there's 3 PACE organizations in the state that are nursing home alternatives that keep people at home healthy, independent, and save the state money by doing that. 2 of the 3 are already sales tax exempt. We as an organization are not. The second reason under that fairness umbrella is, again, we are a nursing home alternative. And that is really what we specialize in doing, is keeping people at home and out of premature placement to nursing homes. And if a person were not in PACE and in a nursing home instead, if a nonprofit, then they would be sales tax exempt. And then 3 other nonprofit hospices, part of larger umbrella organizations, are also often exempt. So the fairness is reason number 1. Number 2 is savings. And I know everybody says this, but for PACE, everybody that is served through PACE is not served in CanCare. PACE is pretty much the only program that's carved out of CanCare. And we are paid through the state Medicaid program 10% less than what the 3 CanCare organizations are paid, which equates to a $4 million of savings to the Medicaid program in Kansas as compared to if PACE were not a program and available. So we have been working to that end, and because this is a good program that has good outcomes, that saves the state's money, we've been working with KDADS, KDHE, and others to expand the PACE program to new areas of the state and into markets already served, and are trying to address enrollment barriers, expand access. They're currently in the House version of the appropriations bill, 3 provisions that would help expand PACE. So we are working with everyone to try to make this program larger, more viable, save the state money. By expanding the program, again, it offsets the exemption and the small cost of that. So those are the 2 main reasons that we would ask for this sales tax exemption. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Thank you, committee. We only have 1 listed proponent, so we will go ahead and turn it over for questions. Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How far west does your organization go?
We go from Wyandotte County over to Wabaunsee County.
You include Wabaunsee or just to the line?
Include Potawatomi, Wabaunsee.
Okay.
So for our PACE program, we primarily serve Shawnee County, Topeka. We're starting a program in Emporia. We have one in Lawrence. And then we started one 2 years ago in Kansas City and Wyandotte and Leavenworth County. We'd like to go into more rural areas. We'd like to go into the Johnson County market. We'd like to go into Southeast Kansas, and we are working on that with KDADS.
Thank you.
You just actually answered my question. It was, what about some of those rural counties, western or southwest Kansas? Is there any possibility of expansion in the future?
There is. Over the first 18 years of this program, so this program started in 2002 in Wichita, started in Topeka in 2007. When I was KDAD secretary several years ago, we put an RFP out to expand PACE to the eastern part of the state with the intent to go to the western part later. And then we awarded new markets to programs, including Kansas City, Wyandotte, Leavenworth, including Johnson County, including Southeast Kansas. Unfortunately, Johnson County and Southeast Kansas fell through when the provider that was awarded the program sold to another organization. So those are two easy pickups here in the future. But I would hope, I care very much about rural healthcare and rural long-term care, and hope that in the future we're able to serve rural areas more than what we do now. So there are states, including Colorado, that have rural PACE programs and do it very well that we can pattern ourselves after. And this would be one barrier, at least for our organization, that would help us, allow us to do that.
Thank you. Representative Epley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here for your testimony. And I know a little bit about PACE. I've toured your facilities and understand the concept of it. And you know, I've really tried to think this through, how it would engage in some of the areas that you mentioned that you're considering expansion to. And as you look at some hospitals, some of which are for profit, some of which are not, most of which are critical access in rural areas that all have home health agencies, how do you reconcile that with the fact that you would be competing directly with them?
So we wouldn't be competing with the hospitals. I think there's...
If they're home health agencies.
The home health. So we primarily, again, 98% of who we serve is Medicaid and Medicare dual eligibles. We provide wraparound services that most home and community-based services programs don't. There is legitimate criticism in the past of PACE in that you lose your physician if you go onto the PACE program and you have to use ours. We have tested a new concept of that in Emporia, and it's worked well, where we use community physicians. They keep their patients. We use our nurse practitioner mid-levels to wrap around services and integrate care. That has worked well, so we're looking to take that to new areas. But to answer your question, I actually think the new federal Rural Hospital Act that KHA and others that you all are working on would be a great solution for expanding PACE and partnering with rural super clinics that no longer have overnight beds to partner with us.
No, if I may continue, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks very much for that answer. And I realize that in the future, you know, that model, whenever it's built out, and that's years away, and so we're not there yet. And so in today's world, where we have a lot of critical access hospitals, the missions of the PACE program versus the missions of these critical access hospitals can somewhat be in conflict, and I didn't know if you really understood that. I've really looked at that because we tried to expand in our area, and soon we're led to understand that the missions are almost diametrically opposed, and so we don't want to put rural hospitals out of business in the hospital so that they can't qualify for the RAH build-out that we're trying to accomplish right now. And so it just makes me not as receptive towards this concept, and I don't know how you reconcile that going forward. I think if you would integrate with those hospitals that have become rural emergency hospitals that in the bill that we're considering, I think that has merit. But with critical access hospitals, I think there's almost a mission conflict there. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Sean.
Next I have on the list, Representative Helgerson.
Hi, Sean. Long time no see. Hello. Mentioned in your testimony that you have a sales tax exemption for Meals on Wheels. And the other two providers have exemptions either because it's a standalone private hospital, a sales tax exemption. And this may be something for Department of Revenue or for our attorneys. Why is it that they are able to use their sales tax exemption for a different entity or a different purpose, and it flows into this purpose, and you're not able to use your sales tax exemption for Meals on Wheels, and it won't flow into your other purposes?
Yeah, Kathleen probably could answer that better than I from KDOR. It may have to do with the percentage of revenue for the organization. So PACE is our largest program. It's 35 out of 50 million annual revenue. Where Meals on Wheels, we serve 900 people a day, but because of the funding of it, it's not much. So it may have to do with that compared to Ascension, where PACE is a very small program in relation to their acute care system where they get their sales tax exemption from. But I don't take that for gospel, please. Again, Kathleen would be better to answer that than me.
Kathleen, did you hear the question? Maybe not. Okay.
Here she comes. She's at the microphone here.
I apologize.
Just a second.
Yes, I did hear the question. And it really doesn't depend on the base of their revenues. There's a specific exemption for Meals on Wheels, and that's how they got, I would assume that that's how they got that exemption under 3606V on page 18 of the bill. So that's how they got their Meals on Wheels exemption certificate.
Well, why would Via Christi, or whatever it's called now, why would they be exempt under a different program? Why would that sales tax exemption carry over to a different program that's not covered under the sales tax exemption?
It may be that that entity at Via Christi is not a separate legal entity, and therefore then it all is covered under that specific hospital exemption.
Okay, thank you.
Next on the list, I have Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. Number one is you said that you would be the only one falling under this because you're unique, that the and statement between the two. So what part are you missing currently between those two? I guess what is it that's moving you across the line to be exempt out of the things on this?
Because the and between 2 and 3, number 3, there's only 3 organizations that qualify as PACE programs. 2 of the other 3 are currently sales tax exempt, and we are not.
And my other question has to do with that. On your testimony, you talk about the 2 of 3 are currently tax exempt due to the nature of the parent organization. And maybe it was in the answer you gave there. I didn't catch it, though. So what is the nature of the 2 of 3 that gets them the exemption versus the one that does not?
One's an acute care organization, hospital system. The other is a senior living and long-term care organization, both of which traditionally receive sales tax exemptions.
And the third is just pure?
Yes.
Okay.
Which we are hospice, primarily hospice, PACE, Meals on Wheels.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Committee, are there any further questions? I have
Chairman?
Representative Alcala online.
Hey, thank you. Sean, what's the average number of participants in the programs?
Sorry, Representative, I didn't catch the last part of that.
What's the average number of people that participate in the programs that you have, the PACE, even hospice, Meals on Wheels, just a rough number?
For our organization, it's 1,700 people a day. In PACE, it's 360. But that's a number that's growing significantly every month. We grow 3 to 4 to 5% every month, particularly over the last year. So there's 800 people in PACE across the state, also growing significantly. From 2002 until 2012, there was a cap on enrollment in PACE. That cap was lifted by the state agency at that time, which allowed significantly more people to be served, and has allowed for the significant growth that'll continue. And then with hospice, we serve about 115 or so, either at home in nursing homes or through an inpatient facility that we have on campus.
Any idea how many of those people fall in the category of 51% low mod income?
50%, sorry, what was the last part?
I said, any idea how many of those people fall within the 51% low mod income?
For PACE, everybody would, all but 1%. For hospice, I could certainly look into that more and send that to you, but
No, that's not necessary. The point I'm trying to make is that I'm familiar with all the programs because they all affect Shawnee County, and most of the Shawnee County
Right.
delegation should be familiar with them. I think they're very good programs. I also think if we didn't have those programs in place, that we would probably be eating up other tax dollars and other social options that would be available by the state. I think the groups that looking for the exemption, I think that it's more and worth the support for the organizations that you represent. So thank you very much for coming out.
Representative Corbett.
Thank you. I don't know whether this will be for you, Sean, or maybe Catherine, but maybe from one of my previous tax committees, do you pay property tax? Because I know that some hospitals, I've been told, do not pay property tax.
We do not pay income tax. We don't pay property tax.
Okay.
Are there any further questions? Representative Bergkamp?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you know what the bulk of your sales tax is paid for today? Like, is it food or material?
It's a couple of categories. Give me a second. So about half of it goes, well, about 40% goes to transportation cost, leasing and purchasing of vehicles. We have 70 vans and buses that we use for PACE and for hospice. Then we have another large percent that goes to medical supplies and equipment. So with PACE, the way it works financially is we make it work. We do well if we keep the person at home and out of the hospital, out of the nursing home. So we do everything humanly possible to make that happen. So if we need to provide a ramp, if we need to purchase medical supplies for their house, we do that. If we need to do whatever to their house, we end up doing that if that's what allows or aids them with that support to keep them at home. So we pay for a lot of sales tax that fits in that category. And then technology, food would be the third and fourth categories.
Thank you.
Representative Clayton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sullivan, I just want you to offer a little bit of clarification to me. Is this a tax experiment? Because the last time you were here, you were asking us to broaden the base quite a bit, and now I'm sort of seeing a little bit of a change here. In all seriousness.
I've blocked that out from my memory. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's okay. You know, there are always ways to heal, and it's never too late. Good to see you. Thank you.
Are there any further legitimate questions? Seeing none, Sean, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Committee, I will address your attention to written-only testimony from Rachel Monger with Leading Age Kansas. Is there anyone else wishing to appear either as a proponent or opponent or neutral on Senate Bill 147? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 147 and move to the next item of business, which is a hearing on House Bill 2413, to which I would turn to the reviser for an overview, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2413 would provide a sales tax exemption for purchases by the Friends of Hospice of Jefferson County. There would also be a sales tax exemption that would apply for sales of entry or participation of fees, charges, or tickets sold by the Friends of Hospice of Jefferson County for such organizations' fundraising event. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions? That's pretty straightforward. Thank you, Adam. I will now turn to Department of Revenue if they wish to address the fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. We are estimating that House Bill 2413 would decrease state revenues by $4,300 in fiscal year 22. Of that, total state general fund is estimated to decrease by $3,600 and the state highway fund by $700. With that, I would stand for questions.
Thank you. Representative Kelly.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Kathleen, is there any indication, are there other agencies that could fall under this exemption that besides this particular one, if it went into place?
Mr. Chairman, based upon the wording of the bill, it specifically provides for the Friends of Hospice of Jefferson County, so we would say that it would be only that one entity.
Could it, yeah, if it's okay, Kathleen, could it set a precedent for other hospices?
I think that's probably possible, yes, Representative.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Department of Revenue? Seeing none, Kathleen, thank you very much for that overview, and we will turn to the proponent testimony and welcome first to committee Representative Ellis, representing the 47th District. Welcome to Tax Committee.
There we are. Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you for this opportunity to talk to you today about a great foundation, not a hospice, and Jefferson County Friends of Hospice, which is a House Bill 2413. It is a support organization for the Jefferson County Hospice Agency. This foundation is a 501c3 and is currently exempt from federal taxes. This foundation has one fundraiser a year. It's called the Taste of Elegance. We charge for a meal and sell donated items, and we have at one time paid taxes, luckily $10,000. It's usually much less. Who is served? People who do not have insurance. They don't have Medicare, or they don't have Medicaid. They're called, the working poor. We help pay their bills at the last of their lives, like the gas bill, the electric bill, their medical expenses like pain meds. One year we paid up to $21,000 in pain meds. We provide for incontinence supplies, wipes, other medical supplies not covered by hospice benefits. What would be done with the money? The Department of Revenue states, is $36,000 to $4,000. You know, that's not much for the state budget, but it'd be a lot of money for our people in Jefferson County. We could rent hospital beds, provide more nursing supplies, help more people stay out of the nursing homes and the hospitals so they can spend the last days of their lives in their own home. Friends of Hospice supports a volunteer program that takes no money for themselves or for anything else. All the monies go directly to the patients. These volunteers are friends helping their neighbors. They write letters, they run errands, they read to them, they go shopping for them, answer questions, and they're just being there for them. They even help plan their own funeral arrangements. All this is done to benefit the people of Jefferson County so they can receive the best of end-of-life care. These are the people helping their neighbors die in their own homes, with their family and friends close by. Sometimes, I know a gentleman in Oskaloosa did not even have any family. This foundation in Jefferson County does a great job in serving the needs of others. If they could have this dispensation, we believe the additional monies could be directed to patients during their end-of-life process. So, thank you for allowing me to testify on behalf of this wonderful organization. I stand for questions.
Committee, I think we'll go ahead and open it up for questions for each one of the proponents, and I would turn to Representative Helgerson for the first question.
Representative, are you seeking a sales tax exemption for medical supplies that are purchased and for the annual fundraising event? And the reason is that two separate things, and you're seeking a sales tax exemption for both of them?
Just for the meal that we sell and the sale items, those two items, for the Taste of Elegance.
Just for the Taste of Elegance?
Yes, only.
And then I'd have a question for Kathleen, because it was my understanding that a not-for-profit that has an annual fundraiser, that those items are exempt. Or they used to be. One-time events were exempt for 501c3s.
Mr. Chairman, we'll go ahead and provide some research on that and get back with you. It's possible that you're thinking that it could have been qualified as an isolated or occasional sale. And so let me get back with you on that if that's all right.
If I could, former Secretary Joan Wagner had, and there was an opinion somewhere, that if it was a one-time annual event for a not-for-profit, that was sales tax exempt. That's specifically. So, thank you.
Representative, did that include both like the meal tickets and any of the items? Okay, thank you for that. Committee, are there any further questions for Representative Ellis? Seeing none, thank you. I'd like to welcome back to committee former representative of the 47th District, Ramon Gonzalez Jr. Welcome to Tax Committee, sir.
Is this on? Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, and it's nice to see some familiar faces, and it's been a long time since I was in here. I couldn't even find the elevators. So I want to thank the committee for listening. You know, we brought up some figures of what it costs, what we lost in a year. We've been trying to pass this bill since 2011. So if you take $5,000 times all the years that have passed, you know, we're looking at almost $50,000 that we lost. This is the end of life hospice. You know, we're talking about the final days. I had the opportunity to deal with hospice when I lost my mother-in-law. And they provide a great service. You know, we do a lot of stuff for the people that are living with ailments like my little Parkinson's that makes me shake all over the place, you know, but this is end of life. If you look on page 16 and 17, you'll see a lot of tax-exempt entities that we have approved. I won't go through each one of them, but you might look and see what we're actually supporting. We've been in the business since 1967. That's a long time to be around for this organization. As for your question, yes, we're looking at Jefferson County. You know, we're a small county, and it's amazing how much money we raise through the Taste of Elegance. All that money goes back to the items that Representative Ellis talked about. So I'm asking for your support. We really need it. And here we are again, and hope it passes. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony, committee. Are there any questions? See none. You got off easy. Thank you for your testimony, sir.
This is the easiest testimony I ever gave.
And welcome back to the State House. Committee, I show no further testimony provided. Is there anyone else wishing to appear on behalf of House Bill 2413? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on 2413 and move on to our next item of business, a hearing on Senate Bill 49. And I would once again turn to the reviser for an overview, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 49 would extend the current tax credit, which applies for contributions to single city port authorities. Currently, the tax credit's slated to expire at the end of this tax year, 2021. The bill would extend this credit eligibility through 2024. Additionally, the bill would also expand the credit to all income taxpayers. Currently, the credit is only available to corporate income taxpayers. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Siebers. Committee, any questions for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you for that. And I will turn to Department of Revenue for an overview on the fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. We did not have data that was available to us to estimate the fiscal effect of allowing these individual income taxpayers the ability to claim this tax credit. So we went with a cap that is provided for in the bill, which is $500,000 per fiscal year. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for questions.
Okay, was there just not any information collected on the history of this use?
There is information that is collected. In the last several years, though, there has been no claims specific to this credit.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Committee, are there any further questions for Department of Revenue? Seeing none, thank you, Kathleen. And we will open up proponent testimony. And first, I would like to welcome to committee Laura McNichol with Watco.
Good afternoon, Chairman Smith and the members of the committee. Can you hear and see me okay?
We can hear you good. We don't have video, but you're loud and clear, so go right ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rural internet over here, so forgive me. So thank you guys for having me today. I'm Laura McNichol with Watco Companies. As you know, we are a Kansas-grown business located in Pittsburgh, Kansas. We are a short line holding company and operate 3 short line railroads in the state of Kansas, one of them being the Kansas and Oklahoma Railroad. When we acquired this railroad in 2001, it was in a state of disrepair, which is often the case for short line railroads. And they exist because the Class 1 railroads at various times since the 1980s have shed low density lines that were not profitable for their businesses. That allowed a company like Watco to step in and grow part of this short line industry that operates all across the country. So when we acquired the Kansas and Oklahoma Railroad, there were specific lines that were very low density. And if you look at my written testimony on the second page, circled in red are the lines in question. The Pittsburgh Port Authority tax credit is the tax credit that allows these lines to stay in operation. And the value of the credit is $500,000 a year. The Pittsburgh Port Authority meets on an annual basis to determine the projects that will take place in the following year and verify and approve the projects that took place in the current year. Sitting on the Port Authority Board of Directors includes a member from KDOT, and we carry out these projects in compliance with their requirements and oversight. We have 8 customers on those lines that are circled on your map on the second page of my testimony. And there's 4 elevators on those lines, a concrete company, a plastics business, we haul mud for drilling, and we also haul fertilizer. And so we're asking today that this bill be passed. We were felt very good that in the Senate, the bill passed Tax Committee as well as the full Senate unanimously. So I stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, committee. I think we'll go ahead and open it up for questions for this conferee. Are there any questions? Representative Turner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought I'd heard KDOR say that they hadn't had any claims for this credit, yet this testimony indicates that this has been key. I'm confused between the two. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Turner, we do take this credit every single year, and so there just must be some discrepancy somewhere in data keeping, but since it's been enacted in 2001, the credit has been used and it works the way it's designed, and we certainly wouldn't leave that on the table given how important it is to do maintenance on these lines to keep them safely in operation.
Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your testimony. So part of your testimony said, I think if the line were to go out of service, it increased cost to the farmers. I assume you guys are doing your comparative approaches of rail versus truck. Is there no way to raise rates versus where truck rates are at now? Or would they just go to trucks if you had to raise rates at this point in time for that line?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, thank you for the question. As a handling carrier, the way the economics of freight railroads work, short-line railroads have very little, let's call it, authority to increase rates. We work through our Class 1 interchange partners to determine the value that we'll get out of moving a rail car. And given the nature of rail, well, I'll say short line rail versus trucking, we're very truck competitive. And as my testimony indicated, a study done by KDOT suggests, and this is 2003, that there could be, an over 5-cent increase per bushel to a farmer if they were only to be subject to truck transportation.
And one more question. So would the short line effectively go out without the credit from Wichita to Western Keeneman or Eastern Pratt County?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, another good question. I'm not in a position to say that if this credit doesn't get renewed, the service goes away. I think that would be irresponsible. We'd have to go back and try to understand where we could grab value to be able to invest in these lines. They operate less than 10 miles an hour. So when we come to pick up a train, rail cars and take it to interchange, it operates very slowly because that's as fast as we can safely go. The project that we did out there last year, we put in 4,000 new cross ties, dumped 1,600 tons of ballast. And, this is what that tax credit paid for. And that's what was needed to be done just to keep these lines operational because of the nature of the low density of the lines.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Gartner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Laura, thanks for being here. One quick question. If we didn't have the short line down there in that part of the state, how many trucks would we keep off the roads or put back on the roads if you weren't there?
Mr. Chairman and Representative, another good question. And I have all these papers on my desk, and I don't have the one that says the amount of carloads, but I think it's around 1,000 carloads a year that come off of those specific lines. And if you just multiply that times 4, that's how many trucks you're putting back on the highway if a railroad's not there to haul it.
Thank you.
Representative Corbett.
To follow up on that, railroads are like anything else. You don't keep them up on a current basis, they get pretty expensive to try to come in and try to bring them back to life. So it seems like it's been around a long time and it's being used for what it's for. So it's being used for what it's intended for. So it seems like you're keeping that part of the state pretty active economically.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Oh, I didn't hear the rest of that. If there was a question, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Corbett, did you have a question or just the comment?
Oh, I didn't. I just, the end of the conversation was I basically see what you're trying to accomplish here. And I think for that part of the state, it's well worth the money spent.
Representative Helgerson.
Ms. McNichol, my memory is that Pat Hubble lobbied a year ago or 2 years ago for, seems like it was $3 to $5 million worth of tax credits for rebuilding the right-of-way or the buildings themselves. Was that not passed either in the transportation bill or somewhere else?
Mr. Chairman and Representative, good memory. I can tell you do not have pandemic brain fog like I do. We did go after a short line tax credit in the last session of the legislature. It ultimately was negotiated to turn into a program and not be a tax credit, but it was very much designed after this Port Authority tax credit, because history indicates that if you incentivize a short line to invest in their infrastructure, it's wise use of taxpayer dollars. What we ended up with was a new $5 million a year short line program that was not only for just short lines, but also shippers. They've got applications over prescribed for it, and they were able to put out projects totaling $4,999,000. And a lot of them went to short line customers, which is excellent.
Is it the same purpose as the $500,000 tax credit?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes, it is. It's for maintenance of way.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions for this conferee? Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Say, as I look at your testimony, it says this credit was put in place basically to bring these lines back to health. So this was viewed, I assume, and had a sunset because it was viewed that it would be a needed injection and an incentive for folks to invest. So by virtue, now it seems we need it for operational purposes, for extending it on into 2024. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, the cost of capital for operating a freight railroad is very high. Due to the nature of the economics of the short line railroad industry, while we haul 24% of the freight, we make about 5% of the revenue. And for us to maintain very low density lines like the lines in question, we're before you today to ask for this credit to be renewed because it is still needed and it is working as designed to keep these lines in operation.
Okay. And the logic behind expanding it to everyone instead of just corporate is that there hasn't been sufficient funding, or what's the reasoning behind that? Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Representative, I could talk all night about short line railroads, but you know, the history is that we acquired these low density, kind of undervalued lines, and the owners of them previous to us taking care of them underinvested in them. While the industry, like the class ones, they haul 286,000 pound rail cars. 40% of the miles in Kansas only haul 263,000 pound rail cars. And so customers have to light load their cars for them to operate on our railroad tracks. We were the lucky recipient in last year for FY19 of a federal grant for the South Kansas and Oklahoma Railroad that would allow us to take those lines, almost 90% of that railroad, to 286,000 pound rail cars. The cost of that project is $40 million. We will never be able to get to that industry standard modern rail car capacity without the help of others. And there's plenty of economics out there that indicate that it's a wise use of taxpayer dollars to invest in short line railroads to keep trucks off the highways.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, Laura, thank you for your testimony. I also was told that Mr. Stuckey, are you a verbal testimony? Okay. I'd like to welcome to committee Randy Stuckey with Kansas Grain and Feed Association and a number of other entities.
Very good, Mr. Chairman. Just Randy Stuckey, and on behalf of the Kansas Grain and Feed Association, so the grain elevators in the state of Kansas, and the agribusiness retailers, so the ag retailers in the state of Kansas. I want to stand up today, and you've heard about the ones and twos, the X's and O's of what this is all about. I wanted to give some color commentary on who this affects. Specifically, you heard 4 grain elevators and then the ag retailers on that short line just west of Wichita. What this short line does is, in addition to keeping those thousands of trucks off of Kansas roads, this one short line allows for the importing of fertilizer for Kansas farmers in that area, and then the efficient and economical exporting of grain from those grain elevators, first from the farmers to those grain elevators on that short line to Wichita, where they hook up with the Class 1s and go down to the port, to the Gulf for export. We have a unfortunate storied history in the state of Kansas of losing our short line rail capacity. And every time a short line is abandoned, as they are across the state, it becomes less and less economical, and the basis is decreased for those farmers in those areas. So just as Representative Gardner mentioned, it's not as if that grain is not going to be moved. It's not as if the fertilizer isn't going to come into the state. What it does is pushes those commodities onto the Kansas roads. So if this $500,000 investment can help to salvage a $40 million investment in this one short line, we think that's a good payoff and a good investment in the state of Kansas. The balance, or the alternative rather, is a lot more investment in Kansas roads along that stretch. So we think it's a good investment in the state of Kansas. This is who it affects, not just the businesses, but the basis for those producers in that area as well. And we appreciate your support of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Stuckey. Committee questions? Representative Bergkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know what the incremental miles a semi would have to travel if, let's say, the short line would go away? So instead of going to Keeneman, it didn't have to go to Hutch. So the trucks are on the road already. It's just a matter, are they going 10 miles or 20 miles? Am I right? Am I thinking?
So the trucks from the farm to the elevator wouldn't be affected, but it's those trucks that go from the elevator to the port, right? So it's either on the short line rail, or you're going to truck it to a terminal elevator, some other terminal elevator. For the folks that are on this route, on this short line, they currently and thankfully have access to rail.
Thank you.
Any further questions, committee? Seeing none in the room and none online, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Committee, I'd also address your attention to written testimony from Shahira Stafford with the Kansas Cooperative Council. Is there anyone else wishing to appear on behalf of Senate Bill 49? I show no opponent or neutral testimony either. We do have a question for Department of Revenue. Chair would recognize Representative Highland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to Representative Turner's question, both in the supplemental note and according to what one of the conferees was saying, they've been using this every year, and then you said it wasn't used. So can you clear that up for us, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. I printed out the tax credit report and it is showing 0. So we will have to go back and check into this at this point. So there's a glitch in our system evidently. So I apologize for that, and we will do some further checking.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 49. And we do have time, committee. I would like to take action on House Bill 2272. While we are getting our materials around for that, I would look to the reviser for an overview on 2272, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2272 would provide for the escrowing of certain taxes paid under protest and provide notice by the county appraiser to other tax entities. Section 1 of the bill, the county appraiser would be required to provide to the county clerk by June 1 the certified list of all real properties that are protesting the valuation or assessment. with appraisal greater than $40,000 and seeking an exemption from property taxes. The clerk will then provide a list to each taxing jurisdiction potentially impacted. Section 2 of the bill would require the county treasurer to provide by January 10 to each taxing jurisdiction a certified list of all real properties that have tax dollars escrowed. Section 3 of the bill would require the county treasurer to place a trust account in escrow and shall not distribute the portion of taxes exceeding the prior year's taxes until a final appeal in the amount of residential property that exceeds $500 or more and commercial property that exceeds the prior year by $5,000 or more if disputed by the taxpayer. However, the escrow provision does not apply to newly constructed structures unless the appraisal exceeds the building permit costs by 115%. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Committee, any questions for the reviser? Seeing none. Committee, what are your wishes on House Bill 2272? Chair recognizes Representative Baker for a motion.
I like this bill. So I move we pass this bill out of committee. I'd like to really see it go on the consent agenda because I know there's no opposition to it. It never hurts to ask. Anyhow, yes, I'd move that we pass this out of committee.
Okay. Is there a second? Second by Representative Corbett. And any discussion, committee? Representative Gartner.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. If I could, I think Mr. Siebers is looking, hopefully Mr. Siebers is looking for that amendment that I have, that gut and go amendment. Can you find that, Mr. Siebers?
Not aware.
What was that? You can't find it?
I'm not aware, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Siebers.
Once again, is there any legitimate discussion on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I know there was some mention of a consent calendar. Is the motion actually to place on the consent calendar or not?
No, Representative Baker, I believe that was just a motion to approve.
I think it's a great idea, but I sincerely doubt that I'll get that through. I'll just go ahead and not ask. One thing I would make a comment, if it's okay.
Certainly.
When we looked at this bill and talked to appraisers and stuff, the number of properties that will be impacted by this is extremely small. We had the Saline County appraiser come in last year and talk to the committee. I think for those that were on the committee, I think he only had like 1 or 2 properties out of tens of thousands that applied. So shouldn't be very impactful, but it is a tool for the taxpayer when they have a problem. That's really what it's designed to do.
Representative Baker, I just have one question. Should this bill pass and be implemented, at what point is this money released from the escrow account when there are no further appeals, or at what time can that be distributed?
The goal of the bill is to get it resolved. As it goes through when the parties agree on the appraisal, then it'll be released.
Any further questions, committee? Representative Turner.
So there was testimony from a couple of cities that talked about the complexity and the systems needs. Has anything given thought to that, I guess, in terms of implementation, and also some conflict with language in Senate Bill 13 and how that would be treated in terms of the trigger for, I don't know if those things have been considered in the final here? Thank you.
So in response to the complexity of it, because we changed and put the threshold at $500 on your appraisal, so that means your house in Johnson County would have to increase about $60,000, $70,000 in 1 year, unexplained, which probably is not going to happen very often, because normally you can go to the appraiser and get it taken care of real quick. He can explain why that happened. On the commercial property, once again, in Johnson County, that would be like a $200,000 or $300,000 increase in appraisal. Doesn't impact very many properties. So with that being said, the computer software is out there now, can take care of those small number of cases. In the rural areas, it probably seldom would happen. But we worked with the appraisers and the treasurers and all those people, and we tried to resolve any questions they had, and the threshold seemed to eliminate most of the questions.
I mean, the testimony I'm looking at is recognizing the thresholds and saying it's unlikely that all residential commercial properties would protest in any given year, citing the 500 and the 115%. However, if 10% of them did, it would, and qualified for escrow, it could create a significant impact on the cities, blah, blah, blah. So, you think it's been resolved? All right, thank you.
Representative Corbett.
One of the good sides to this bill will be that when the money, however it's settled, the money will be there. When we first came, one of my first times in tax, there was a big case at Monarch Cement down in southeast Kansas, and they appealed and appealed and appealed forever, and when they won, everybody had spent the money. They never thought they would ever, whatever. But this kind of gives it a kind of a pause, take a break. The money's sitting there for the winter. So I think it's a lot better so nobody overspends or underspends. I think it's a good bill.
Committee, any further questions? Any further discussion? Any further amendments? Seeing none, Representative Baker, you may close.
I appreciate the time everybody put in on this and the good questions, and I hope we can see our way to get this across the line. So with that, I close.
Committee, you've heard the motion by Representative Baker to approve House Bill 2272, favorable for passage. Going to mute Representative Stogstill for just a moment. There we go. You've heard the motion, committee. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The bill is approved. Committee, that concludes our business for the day. I do want to make an announcement for next week. We do intend on working House Bill 2421, the decoupling bill that we heard this week. We will work that on Tuesday. We have the schedule cleared at this point for Tuesday, and we will try to spend our time working our way through that. So if you have amendments to prepare, use House Bill 2421 as the vehicle for that. Are there any questions regarding that? Seeing none, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of the schedule.